Good evening and welcome to City News. It's election night in Montreal. We are live outside of a polling station in NDG where right now it's a little bit quiet in terms of turnout, but people have been going in and out to cast their ballot for the next mayor of Montreal, their borough mayor and their councillors. This is one of the boroughs to watch tonight in terms of hot races, Côte-des-Neiges, NDG. We'll be bringing you some analysis on the region coming up in a little bit. But first, voting day means that polls in Montreal are closed at 8 p.m. 1.1 million Montrealers are registered to vote, 12.9% of which already went to the polls during the advance polls on October 30th and 31st or voted by mail. And Elections Montreal says as of noon today, just over 25% of voters turned out. There are 340 candidates registered to run for office in Montreal with 103 positions to be filled: the city mayor, 18 borough mayors, 46 city councillors, and 38 borough councillors. Tonight, three main contenders for mayor of Montreal: incumbent Mayor Valérie Plante with Projet Montréal, former Mayor Denis Coderre with Ensemble Montréal, and founder of Mouvement Montréal, Balarama Holness. Now joining me is political analyst Karim Boulos to talk all things elections tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, Karim.
It's my pleasure.
What do you think of the turnout so far? Are you surprised with this quiet polling station?
Well, it says a few things about what Montrealers are feeling. One, they don't really want to go out because the pandemic is scaring many people into staying home and choosing to apply to vote on by mail, for example. But on the other hand, people typically go out to vote when they have something to protest. When they don't like the incumbent, you'll see the voter turnout increase. They need to send a message to try to replace the individual currently in place. A low voter turnout, as you mentioned earlier, 25% or so earlier today, is a little lower than expected. We're aiming for somewhere between 42 and 45%. Typically for a municipal election, and it looks like we're going to be below that, which is probably good news for the Valérie Plante camp.
Tell me why it's so important for people to actually turn out and vote in municipal elections specifically.
You know, it's interesting. It's the most important level of government for us as individuals. It's what affects our daily lives. It affects how the parks are maintained, how snow is removed, the schedule of garbage removal, the services we receive, leisure, public safety, all falls under the municipal banner. And yet it's of the three levels of government, the one where the lowest turnout is seen consistently every election after every election. And surprisingly, you think that there will be increasing interest as you move up from provincial to federal, but in Quebec, the highest level of turnout is really at the provincial level, topping the 70-75% voter turnout. And so I think it's unfortunate that people don't appreciate the extent to which a local government can make a huge difference in their day-to-day lives. And the things we complain about most, whether it be cones or traffic or potholes, are the jurisdiction of the municipality. So if one area should interest people most, it should be this one.
On to polls, in the whole campaign, it seemed that Coderre and Plante were in a dead heat up until last week. And then all of a sudden things changed and we saw that Plante was leading. What do you think was the ultimate, change in that?
I think along with Valérie Plante leading, we also see Balarama Holness climbing in the polls. He was starting at somewhere between 5 and 7%, got to about 10. Recently, he's been polled close to 13. And if Valérie Plante has an edge, it would stand to reason that Mr. Holness is stealing Mr. Coderre's vote. And so I think it says a little bit about how people are feeling regarding Mr. Coderre's campaign. And I think he's had a little bit of trouble, just had many bumps in the road. But if there's one thing I've seen, I don't trust polls. We've seen it from the U.S. to Canada to Quebec. Last election, Madame Plante was actually trailing, and she won the election. And so I wouldn't put much stock. If someone were to call me and ask me who I was going to vote for, I may or may not tell them the truth.
Okay, so we're not banking on those polls that we've been seeing. Do you think there could be any surprises tonight then?
Well, I think that the way the winds are blowing in the favor of Madame Plante, I'm not ready to predict that that's what the result will be, but I think that she's had a relatively stable campaign. I don't know that she's really, gained any kind of momentum towards the end of her campaign. She had a little bit of a bump with the announcement of one of her candidates withdrawing himself from the Projet caucus, but other than that, she's had a very stable, very uneventful in a good way. In politics, uneventful is good. And having an uneventful campaign is something she's managed to hold on to. Mr. Coderre started out with a bang, big news. He wrote a book. He announced all the changes and his vision for a more densely built Montreal and more social housing through construction and economic development. And he changed his tune on that throughout the campaign. He lost some key people, starting with Ali Nestor, his coach, who got him fit and ready to get back into the political arena. He lost other candidates along the way for, questionable behaviors. And so I think, Mr. Coderre, as they say, right, it's not how you start the race, it's how you finish it. He started strong, but seemed to peter out over the last few weeks.
So do you think it's possible that he reclaims the prize that he lost in 2017?
I think it was a tall order no matter what, because it was a very close race in the last election. It was about 5% difference in the overall popular vote in favor of Madame Plante. So, certainly every candidate has a chance, but in this particular case, Madame Plante has managed her messaging very well. She's been very present on social media. She's reached out to the younger vote. She's done a good job of interesting people, getting people interested in the things that they should care about, specifically social housing, the environment, the place of public transit and how we move people through a city. I think that message has come very clear. And one thing she proved is that what she promised, she delivered. Whether you like it or not, she said she was going to do something, and she's followed through on every one of her programs. We're waiting for the pink line, of course, but other than that, she's been a woman of her word. And unfortunately, if we compare 4 years to 4 years, Mr. Coderre was mired in controversy with the E-race, the lighting of the bridge, the granite stumps on the mountain, the various positions he took regarding the way he ran his administration. He was deemed a one-man operation. Some people questioned his level of confidence bordering on arrogance. And so these facets really still dog him today. He's supposed to be Denis Coderre 2.0, a new and changed person. But we're seeing some little flashes of the former Denis Coderre, which people typically, didn't seem to love in terms of his delivery. But again, we can talk a little bit about it later on. I think it's going to be regional as far as Montreal is concerned. It's not a wave one way or the other. We know Madame Plante's, Projet Montréal's stronghold, and we know Mr. Coderre has a strong base in the north, the west, and the east. And so it's going to come down with a few key a few key boroughs. Specifically, you look at La Salle and Verdun, you look at Mercier-Hochelaga, Maisonneuve, you look at Rivière-des-Prairies, Pointe-aux-Trembles, Montreal North. These are going to be very critical, and depending how the votes are split, could give him an extra couple of seats to actually give him a shot. It won't be a runaway by either candidate. It will be close, but not so close that it will be a one-seat decision. I think it'll be a 5-6 seat difference on the municipal council.
Would you say, though, that this is a rematch from 2017 between Plante and Coderre?
I think that's how it's being billed. But if you remember, 2 elections ago, Mr. Coderre won because Mélanie Joly was in the mix, if you recall. And then it divided the votes between Mr. Bergeron and Mr. Coderre, and then Mr. Coderre got through, and Mélanie de Joly actually did quite well. Last election, it was a 2-horse race, and she won. Not a landslide, but a convincing win. Is this a rematch? Yes, it's a rematch. But the stakes are very different because now you're comparing 4 years to 4 years. You have the Coderre administration for all of its good and all of its not so good. You have the Plante administration, 4 years, although not really 4 years because the last year and a half of Valérie Plante's tenure has been COVID. And so there's been very little going on, but no one's going to blame Madame Plante for that because it's completely out of her control. So I think it'll be interesting. It's not exactly, it is a rematch, but not under the same circumstances, and one would say. It's a very different bench for each team going back into a competition. So the results can't be based on their previous performances.
How would you say Balarama Holness's team performs tonight? What are your predictions in terms of how many seats they'll get at the table?
I think Balarama Holness, very much like Mélanie Joly 2 elections ago, is a spoiler. I think he's going to play a very key role in certain boroughs, specifically Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, where his message, you look at some of his ratings, he's at about 13%, we said. Among francophones, he's got about 3% support. But non-francophones, according to the last Léger poll, he's at 23% support. So you look at the NDG sector, you look at some parts of the West Island, he's certainly going to be stealing votes. But to win a seat takes a lot, right? To unseat an incumbent takes quite a bit. Does he have the star candidates? Have they been on the ground? And that's the tricky part. During COVID, the handshaking and the knocking on doors has been limited. So I think Mr. Holness is starting, significantly behind the other two candidates. But I think he could be a spoiler by splitting up some of the votes. So his presence will certainly be felt. And there's no way that either candidate, Mr. Coderre or Madame Plante, can really discount the impact he's going to have. How many seats? I think if I were him and I were to pick up 2 or 3 seats in municipal council, I think that's a massive victory. That is huge, coming from complete obscurity, not being allowed to even participate in a debate only 4 weeks ago, to actually winning seats could be a huge success for him.
Thanks so much, Karim. We'll check back with you in a little bit. Now, polls are closing at 8 p.m., so if you haven't had a chance to get out and vote, you still have an opportunity to do so. And if you need more information, you can check out elections.montreal.ca for more information. We'll have more analysis for you coming up in a little bit. In NDG, Alicia Rubertucci, City News.